So, how is this Parsha unique this week? Aside from being my Bar Mitzvah Parsha, it's not unique at all. There's no special maftir. We're just going to read the Parsha as is and the Haftarah as is. And what I'm referring to is the break in the weeks of the Arba Parshiyot. And I thought I would take a moment this week to explain roughly, simply, the idea of these Arba Parshiyot. When I was growing up, I would get to shul, I was very proud, I would show my father, I knew exactly where the laning was, where the Kriyat Torah was, and then suddenly we get to the maftir, and he'd say, oh no, it's not there. What happened? So, I want to explain to you what I didn't know back then to make it as organized and as meaningful as possible. The Arba Parshiyot are 4 weeks, not in a row, as we'll get to, 4 weeks where we read a special maftir, i.e. we read all the 7 aliyot as normal, but instead of repeating some of the last aliyah for the maftir, for the bridge between the reading of the Torah and the reading of the Haftarah, we switch to a different place in the Torah. Okay? The first week is Parshat Shkalim, which was last week. And the idea is that about a month before Nisan, the Beit HaMikdash would collect funds to buy the new korbanot for the years to come. I.e., there were korban tamid, shel shachar, shel ben harbaim, musaf, and so on. There were public korbanot that needed to be brought, and they needed funds from the public in order to donate. And the idea was the machatzita shekel was that contribution. So the idea was that there would be an announcement about a month before Nisan to make sure everybody knew that they had to start saving their funds to contribute for a month's time in Nisan. So we read for Parshat Shkalim, we read from the beginning of Parshat Ki Tisa, the first 12 psukim, and we read about how the machatzita shekel was donated. Okay. The rule for this parasha is that it's always read on or right before Rosh Chodesh Adar, and the Adar closest to Nisan, which is why we read it last week, because this week was Rosh Chodesh Adar. Okay, so that's Parshat Shkalim. The next parasha is Parshat Zachor. There's a mitzvah deoraita for everyone to remember Amalek at least once a year, formally reading it from the mitzvah from the Torah. And Chazal decided to choose to read it in the season of Amalek, i.e. the season of Purim, when we destroy Amalek in the Megillah. And therefore, Parshat Zachor, which is read from the last 3 psukim of Parshat Ki Tetzeh in Dvarim Kafeh, we read about the mitzvah to destroy, to oppose Amalek, and it's always read, this maftir, this special maftir, Parshat Zachor, is always read the Shabbat before Purim, which is why, of course, Purim's in 2 weeks from now, which is why we have a break for this week of Parshat Pekudei. Then, the third parsha is Parshat Para. Para is read from the beginning of Parshat Chukat, first 22 psukim, I believe, of Parshat Chukat, and it describes the Para Aduma. The Para Aduma was the vehicle to metaher, to purify people from tumat met, and the idea was you couldn't be tameh met, you couldn't be impure from a dead body when you brought the korban Pesach. So Chazal wanted to remind the tzibor that getting closer, you're going to have to make sure you metaher, you purify for the mitzvah of the korban Pesach. Okay, so Parshat Para was read. Now, Parshat Para is not based on a time like before Rosh Chodesh Adar, like Parshat Shkalim, or before Purim, like Parshat Zachor. It is always read adjacent to Parshat HaChodesh, which is the 4th parsha. Okay, now what's Parshat HaChodesh? Parshat HaChodesh is read from Shmot Yud Bet, about also 22 psukim or so. And it starts with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, which is the mitzvah of the new moon and setting the calendar and so on. But it's kind of a misnomer, Parshat HaChodesh, because the rest of the psukim describe the Korban Pesach. So that's actually why we read it. It should really probably be called Parshat Korban Pesach. But anyway, so it's Korban Pesach because it's reminding people so soon you're going to have to bring the Korban Pesach. You're going to have to do that mitzvah. So start planning, start getting your sheep and so on in order to do so. Therefore, you always read Parshat HaChodesh on or right before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, i.e. giving people at least 2 weeks to prepare for the Korban Pesach. So Parshat Parah, which is the purification, is read adjacent to the Parshat HaChodesh, which is about the Korban Pesach, because obviously they are a united idea. And that's really the layout of Parshat HaChodesh, Arba Parshiyot. And ultimately, if you look at the calendar, there are some times where Arba Parshiyot take 5 weeks. Sometimes they actually take 6 weeks with 2 weeks of breaks in between. But they never, ever merely take 4 weeks. Shabbat Shalom.